Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this very important piece of legislation. And of course, Mr. Speaker, I think this maybe should have been done a long time ago, but I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, to be associated with a government who is leading in that regard. Mr. Speaker, over the years, this country has invested significantly in the built environment. We have invested in sending men and women out to develop themselves as engineers, quantity surveyors, land surveyors, valuation surveyors. We have invested significantly in having architects, architectural technicians, mechanical engineers. We have invested significantly and have provided a number of qualified individuals. Mr. Speaker, some persons have returned home and have established professional organizations. And of course, I could speak of the architectural organization, the civil engineering organization. Now we have the quantity and valuation surveyors. Some of these practices, Mr. Speaker, are licensed. Some others are not and have not been. Mr. Speaker, the built environment is a significant part of the wealth of a country. It is significant, and of course, it ought to be regulated. Mr. Speaker, if one glean at the land registry and see the number of transactions, property transactions in a year, and account for the information or the value of information within our land registry, that persons would walk in through their solicitors and have access to that information. We have been giving out of our country vital, valuable information that expatriates are using to come in our country to transact without paying a cent to such information. Mr. Speaker, I know in some other jurisdiction where you have to pay $10,000 US yearly to have a license to access information in the land registry. And professionals like myself pay for it, because that data is useful for transaction. Mr. Speaker, there has been debate on the value of properties, and I've heard members in this House speculate as to what should this property be valued at. I've heard the leader of the opposition, speak to the lands in that location there in Banan, where land was sold, speculating as to what the value of land should be. There are comparables to determine value of lands. I've seen comparables used to determine value of property. But I've also seen, Mr. Speaker, advertised on the roadside, real estate agencies from outside of St. Lucia advertising local lands to be sold. I have seen the names and I've recognized these brokers as overseas brokers, and I've said to myself, wow. And there was once I was driving up the Monrepo Hill, and there may have been a development on that area, and I saw advertised on the road the name of a foreign real estate based in the UK advertising lands to be sold in Monrepo. I have seen it. I recognize it. And if you drive through Cap Estate, I have seen foreign real estate advertising land in St. Lucia to be sold. I'm happy that this government is giving structure to this industry to ensure that if you're going to participate at that level, you ought to be licensed. Here, Mr. Speaker, the built environment is too important for us to allow it. And whereas the member indicated that we're not exercising control over everything because we have a free market economy. And she gave provision where if you have your house to sell, you can sell it without being restricted by the act. But it speaks that if you are a real estate business and you cannot just parachute yourself into the Helen of the West Indies without a license to sell property, and you're selling lands under the pitons, you're selling land in Cap Estate, and now you move into Monrepo selling lands and charging 5% and taking it and going home with it. This is what has happened over the years. You know, a lot of that has happened. And I have been, Mr. Speaker, in the business of valuing property for more than 33 years. I have valued properties for persons who are interested in selling. One of the things, Mr. Speaker, is that the Jamaican, the College of Science and Technology have a program specifically for training real estate or creating real estate persons within the economy. And I recall while I was there, at the end of the school day, you could see so many bankers and persons going on to be trained doing the real estate course and get licensed so they could participate in the built environment where they could sell property. And I've always reflected, wow, there are more persons going to school on evenings in Jamaica just to be trained as a real estate agent. Mr. Speaker, it's very important what we're doing here and what this government is adding to the built environment. Mr. Speaker, we have leases, and those leases are, by today's standard, very complex leases. If you have a 90-year-old lease and you want to sell it, a real estate will process the transaction, will place a value on it, and how do you sell the 45 years on the lease? And all of this is important transaction, and professionals must participate, as against having some politicians playing to be the expert on land values. It would be interesting, Mr. Speaker, when a real estate board decide monthly to publish values of properties and to advise professionals to read and get some sort of insight as to how the real estate market is playing. That is useful for development, Mr. Speaker. And of course, it would also be able to give you a sense as to how properties are being sold, how many transactions you are having. A real estate board is taking on a lot, quite a bit, in terms of structuring your economy, structuring your built environment, and giving significance to the buying and selling of property in your market. You will discover how many hotels plans are being moved from one hand to the next, and to what extent it is happening. They will also share with you what's happening outside of this jurisdiction, so you see whether you have a comparative advantage in probably developing the property market for offices as against some other aspect of the property market. Mr. Speaker, this is useful. Sometimes they believe, and some other people believe, that our government is locked into not being able to think beyond. But we are not. And I'm happy that we are taking this country to the next level. We are doing this. So, Mr. Speaker, I cannot help but to say that some of the conversations I've listened in the past as it relates to castigating this member for sale of property in the Fuasho area, when the member for Nickel South indicated that whoever was purchasing it is insignificant, but to that extent, as against providing technical and comparables to make the case. A real estate board would provide structure that even debates in the House on value of property could be more aligned with how this science, how that is built. And of course, if there's a real estate board who would probably glean into the transaction that took place at that place in Bois de Wage, where now we have a property valued at one level, but we are purchasing, we are renting and leasing that property in ways that is unheard of, Mr. Speaker. I cannot imagine how that could have happened had we have in place a real estate board who would have written on property values in that part of the island, in the Bois de Wage area. And yes, Mr. Speaker, as I have a day to die, I will reflect on this as one of the most, unforgiving transaction, that you cannot even rent this property as a government and put into your budget exactly how much it would cost you, because the management arrangement is that you have to pay for it as that happens. So it could happen that your management fee in 1 year could even be more than your rental because of the way it's arranged. Right, mister? The management, how do you pay for the management fee? Administration of the building. So if somebody have a breakdown in the electrical system of that building, it has to be paid by the one who's renting the building. That's how it is. If the air conditioning machine break down, you must pay for it. On a monthly basis, you must pay even the uniform that the people working in this building, maintaining the building, it is part of what you expected to pay. You understand? This is in the lease arrangement. It is in the lease arrangement. And that is unheard of, because whole life costing of a building, the whole life costing of a building is so high. The maintenance, the rental, how much the building consumes in every aspect of the day. You're telling somebody who's renting the building or leasing the building to pay for it. So we must pay a cost per square foot, and every wear and tear on that building, we must pay for it monthly. That's how that lease is arranged. That's how it's arranged. You must pay a cost per square foot, and the wear and tear of the building is arranged in the lease that you must pay for it separately. Yeah, and your utilities and what have you. That is how it's arranged. You do not value property in a lease arrangement that way. And of course, Mr. Speaker, we will have an interesting way of moving forward when you have a real estate board giving structure to values of property across the island, where, especially the north of the island, where you probably have more transaction than anywhere else, an important transaction. So here we are saddled with probably the largest, maybe the largest real estate office block in this island, the largest ever, at a cost that we will discover one day that is really, really, really unfair, unforgivable. Because the member from Mikot South, did not subscribe to professional information, but allow himself to enter into arrangement without any guidance from professionals. So this government is giving structure to the real estate industry, is giving organization to the built environment, and I am happy at this time, even if I'm not into much practicing as a quantity surveyor, but just the idea that one of these days I can look into some paper and get some feedback, some documentation, somebody commenting as to how the real estate market is doing in St. Lucia. You can compare it to how it's doing in Barbados. You can compare it to how it's doing in Jamaica. That is where our development, our people should go. So now those who are doing quantity and valuation surveyors, our real estate officers, the officers for many years who studied valuation surveying at the College of Arts, Science and Technology will welcome that, because they long for that environment. They were always asking, well, anybody could come and do that. Nobody's licensed and what have you. They were complaining. That was the conversation. You understand? Anybody can be a real estate agent and sell. And they were complaining, but we went to school, we did our degree, we are qualified. And there was no room for the specialization. No room for it. This government has given structure. So all those who, that listening, of course, we are part of a professional organization. And Mr. Speaker, I happen to be one of the first president of the Quantity and Valuation Surveyors Organization in St. Lucia. The first, when I came from school. And we discussed this passionately because we wanted structure in the industry. We wanted to be protected. We wanted to be recognized. We wanted to make our contribution in a very, very, structured way. And today, I know that all of my colleagues were listening, hearing that there is a board for the real estate market. We're celebrating, and I'm sure the quantity and valuation surveyors would say, finally, we're getting somewhere with our industry. Finally, something is happening. And finally, Mr. Speaker, not only that we would operate, but those persons who invest, those persons who take their life saving or work all their life to build a home, and they now need to value it or put it on the market because they want to take care of the children's education, or they want to use it to take care of chemotherapy or medical condition, that could happen in an environment where they get value for money. That's important. Because too often, Mr. Speaker, some individuals go nighttime and discuss with people who are in crisis, and they take their property from them and give them absolutely nothing, relatively, because these people are vulnerable. I know many individuals, the land that they sold, some to politicians as well. Some politicians have picked up lands. Mr. Speaker, that is for another debate. Real estate. You understand? In exchange for what? A real estate board will speak loud, because you would see the comparables next door would have been published that block and parcel 1054 was sold at $15 a square foot. You would not sell yours for $1 a square foot or $3 a square foot because you are desperate. Mr. Speaker, this is very important, and a structure, as we continue to put structure within our economy, as we continue to put structures where it's needed. And Mr. Speaker, finally, just to reflect on the way we arrange for construction projects, which bring that into question. Again, a real estate board will give some guidance, because now we have public-private partnerships in putting properties together. We have both built, own, lease and transfers. It speaks to a real estate selling a property that's built onto bolt. What is left? It is a complex transaction, and a real estate agent can give guidance to this and would have better understanding as to why an airport can be and preferred built under a PPP arrangement than as government use its conventional, normal construction contract, which is the time of the past. And as to why a hospital is best not done under a PPP arrangement. All of this would give guidance, because you now put in structure in place. And our banking sectors will be able, at best, to have the right professionals on the panels as they speak to value of properties. So, Mr. Speaker, I add these words because this government is not shy of moving forward. We're not shy of putting structures in place. We are not shy in terms of what we must do to keep St. Lucia more secured, St. Lucia, in every aspect of the living. I thank you.